cyber, criminals. I was just talking at lunch today about they literally are just like us. They kiss their wife and kids off when they leave for the day. They go to an office. They have dual screens just like us. They clock in and they work, and their job is to hack your business and get your money out of your business. And so they literally are just like us, showing up, doing a job to provide for their family. Unfortunately, it comes at a cost to the people like us in our businesses that we're trying to run. And so we have to be prepared. And so that's why we have this weekly cybersecurity briefing, Thursdays at 1:30 Central Standard Time. My screen should be, let's see here, share with you, and we'll get started. Like I said, this is typically about 15, 20 minutes. We'll get through it as quickly as possible, and I have some good stuff today. So first things first is who are we? I just want to say thank you for being here. Cyber threats are obviously a growing problem. If you have any questions, please feel free to email hello@rethinksecured.com. This briefing will be 15 to 20 minutes. Our agenda is the same agenda we have every week. We do an introduction, cybersecurity. We go over the current cybersecurity landscape, recent cyber attacks and breaches, cybersecurity best strategies. I try to leave you with one nugget. If there's any updates in the FTC safeguards, compliance, and then I'll make some closing statements. So who are we? I'm Garrett. I'm the CEO here at Vandernet. We're a cybersecurity focused IT solutions company. We specifically cater towards the accounting and wealth management markets because financial services is number 2 in regard to attack vector, healthcare being number 1. And Vandernet, we're a cybersecurity focused IT solutions company focused in the US Central region, and we protect those firms 24/7, 7 days a week. So the current cybersecurity landscape, trends, threats, and developments. About 2 weeks ago, I thought I went over 3 specific areas of where businesses really see cyber issues. And I'm going to focus, we're going to break over the next 3 weeks, focus on the specific area that we identify. And that would be how malware is distributed. Part 1 is today, and part 1 is social engineering. And like I said, 2 weeks ago, I went over the 3 categories, social engineering, vulnerabilities, and the third one is supply chain attacks. But today we're going to talk specifically about social engineering and how this is a huge, huge problem. We can, at the end of the day, we can have all these security tools in place across your organization, your IT, your outsourced IT provider. They could be providing you these solutions, but the best defense to any threat that we face as a business is to be aware of what social engineering is. And that's people trying to fake you into believing something that is something from somebody else that you're anticipating or expecting from, or somebody that's just trying to get you to click something like a UPS package being delivered. So I'm going to go through these just real quickly, highlight these, and then we'll move throughout the presentation. But the most common way that social engineering happens is through your email, whether that be a phishing email, like I said, from somebody you think it is, even though it might not be. If you look at the from sender, it's very important to look at who's it actually from. It might have the right name, but does it have the right email address? Next is we're seeing Teams or similar messaging apps. Did you know that if you receive a Teams message from a colleague, there's an 80% click rate? So if a single member in your organization gets their account compromised and a Teams message is sent to another colleague in the organization, there is an 80% chance somebody's going to click that. And that's a big problem. So we have to be mindful, even maybe it's not external, maybe it's coming from a colleague. So we need to be careful about those Teams messages or those Slack channel messages or those Google messaging account that we have that we may receive from a colleague, and to think, I don't know if this is really them. I should probably ask, pick up the phone and call them. Attached directly to an email. A lot of times people send fraudulent, like fake PDFs that have viruses enabled in them, or a Word document that would have a macro attached to it that would launch malware into your system. Those are very common ways. Social media is definitely becoming the big way that hackers are trying to compromise businesses, whether that's them purchasing ads, just like any e-commerce advertising, them purchasing ads and soliciting like, oh, your computer's a virus, and then you click on it, and the next thing you do, you didn't have a virus, but now you got a virus and you have to deal with it. That's a common way that happens. The embed malware, just like I talked about in the Word document, or you find a USB drive laying in a parking lot. Please, if you find a USB drive in the parking lot, do not plug it into your computer. It's a no. So next we'll move into recent cyber attacks. I've got 3 specific things to talk to you about today with my time that I have with you. And the first thing I'm going to talk about that happened within the last week, technically towards the end of April, but it's really kind of came out of the news lately, is this hackers compromised Dropbox eSignature service. And so I'm going to exit out of my screen here, and I'm going to pull up for you specifically the article, and we're going to read it just briefly so you can kind of understand the scope. And we're going to talk about why this is important, that you be mindful of all those software as a service applications that you got hanging out there in the cloud, that we're putting everything. It seems like we store things locally on our computer, but we have a lot hanging out there in the cloud, and we have to be super mindful of not only what do we have out there in the cloud, but how is it protected while it's in there in the cloud. And in this particular case that you're going to see today, this particular incident had nothing that a Dropbox user themselves could do anything about. It had to do with the company itself being attacked. And so I'm going to exit my screen here. I'm going to pull it up. This is Dropbox Sign, formerly known as Hello Sign, enables users to send, receive, and manage legally binding e-signatures. According to Dropbox, a threat actor gained access to Sign's production environment and access customer information, including email addresses, usernames, phone numbers, hash passwords, data on general accounts, and authentication data such as APIs, auth tokens, and multi-factor authentication. Why is this important? Because they can now use that information that they got access to, whether it being the hash passwords, and they can run decryptors against it and actually get the real passwords. They can, API keys are used. Dell just got compromised via an API key. If you remember that, about a week or so ago, Dell Computers was hacked. 49 million accounts, that's accounts, not specific personal identifiable information inside those accounts, were hacked, and it was due because of an API key. API keys allow software to talk to other software that could be related to each other, maybe the same organization, or maybe 2 different pieces, 2 different organizations, and they use API keys to talk back and forth. So this in particular was stolen in multi-factor authentication. Why is this important? If I have passwords, which we're going to run a hash against, and then we're going to decrypt those passwords, and now I have access to the multi-authentication side of things, I'm in other accounts. They specifically are saying right now that sensitive information, actual signed documents did not actually get stolen, but the verdict is still out. As you can see, it says that they are currently is still investigating this incident response. The key is you have to be aware of what is out there in the cloud. And are you using eSignature platform for a reason? Maybe you need to download those and better protect them locally after you get the eSignatures in place. Just some brainstorming, some thinking about as we think about that. So scenario number 2 is a cyber attack forces U.S. healthcare system to divert ambulances and take records offline. This is huge. It's a recent healthcare system just within our area, St. Louis specifically. I think they had 17 major hospitals. Cyber attackers got into the hospital systems and ransomware them, shut them down, and they were diverting patients because they could not facilitate care for them in their facility. mentioned earlier, healthcare is the #1 attack vector. Financial services is #2. So let's read this article real quick. This article says, a cyber attack on Ascension healthcare system operates in 19 states across the US, forced some of its 140 hospitals to divert ambulances, caused patients to postpone medical tests, and blocked online access to patient records. They said that they detected unusual activity, which then officials refused to say whether or not the nonprofit Catholic health system based in St. Louis was the victim of a ransomware attack or whether it had paid a ransom. It did not immediately respond to any email updates. It's important that we are doing everything we can to protect the personal identifiable information that our customers choose to house with us. It's their choice, but we have a choice to say, how are we going to protect this information? And we have to choose wisely. They're trusting us. They're choosing to do business with us. We have to choose to do what is right, and that's protecting their information. Yeah, because they're our customer at the end of the day. Without customers, the customers are the reason we exist as a company. And so it's important that we're taking that approach seriously and taking care of them. So when you think about it, I just was at a conference 2 weeks ago, and I was talking to some healthcare professionals that were at the conference that take care of healthcare IT. And I said, okay, well, talk to me about what you guys got. What do you guys got going on? How are you protecting customer information? And I started asking questions, and they just kind of looked at me with deer in the headlights look. And they quickly revealed to me that they had very little cybersecurity protections in place, protecting their entire healthcare system. And so I don't know if it's a matter of just not being educated, or if it's a matter of maybe finances aren't being allocated to the right direction to protect that information. But it is a serious concern. It's a grave concern that we're taking care of our customers' information. So it's not obvious after my conversation a couple weeks ago why it is that healthcare is not only the most profitable because of the amount of information that they have, but because not only how profitable healthcare is, but it seems that they have very little systems in place. So it's a huge attack vector. And then I'm going to give you an update on the U.S. Federal Trade Commission. I think one thing that we're starting to see with the FTC safeguards, specifically focusing on financial services sector, is they are scaling up. And this specific article says the U.S. Trade Commission said it needs 55 additional staff to help with the enforcement actions in its 2025 budget request, including 10 dedicated to increasing complex privacy issues and the rise of artificial intelligence in advertising industries. The proposed request for overall financial resources was budgeted at $535 million. I'm telling you this, and this is my FTC safeguards update for you today. We have to be proactive, and we have to take care of customer information and data, because if we don't, there's agencies, ABC, agency, acronyms, letters, whatever you want to call it, that are gearing up to come fight for the consumer. And so we have to be proactive. We have to understand what the FTC safeguards are. We have to have cybersecurity risk assessments. We have to take care of that information. If you don't know what your risk is today, have a conversation with us. We're happy to help you. We'll help you identify what your risk looks like, so you can have conversation as to whether you feel like you should do something about it or not do anything about it. But one thing we will always find out is people have more risk than they originally thought that they had through an assessment process. So lastly, before we get into our tip for today, I want to say this. I brought this up a couple weeks ago. It is extremely important that you understand this. Every time you open software on your computer, that software can access everything you can. Why is this important? We need to be thinking about the software that we have on our computer. If it's free, we have to ask ourselves, why is it free? Probably not a great idea if it's free or if it's cheap. Typically, what we find in our industry, from what we know at Vandernet in our industry, if the software is cheap, then they probably aren't spending the necessary money in code review and security to make sure that they aren't being hacked or that their clients aren't being hacked. Free comes at a price, cheap comes at a price too. So please keep that in mind today because it's super important for you and your customers. Okay, so cybersecurity best practices. We're wrapping it up here, okay? My tip for you today, the big idea, so we're talking about social engineering today. We're talking about how people can call and act like they're somebody else, or they can email you and act like they're somebody else. Social engineering is the number one way that companies are hacked and compromised. So the big idea today is call back for sensitive information. If you receive a phone call from somebody and you think you know who it is, you think it's the voice that you remember, and it's a conversation regarding any sensitive information, you politely say, hey, thanks for calling me. I'm going to give you a call right back. And what that does is hackers are really good at spoofing inbound. They can spoof inbound caller ID. They can also spoof voices nowadays with AI. It's important that you just simply, they have a hard time spoofing outbound. Like, so people can't, if you call them back, that it's calling that person that originated you back, supposedly, they'll pick up and that will be the legitimate person that called you. And you validate that that was the person that was asking for this sensitive information. You might be surprised. One day you'll call somebody back and be like, no, I didn't call you. What are you talking about? Call the people back. Hang up the phone and call them back. And that big idea today is going back to the vendor list we talked about last week. Create an exhaustive vendor list. Who's the provider? What's the service they provide? Who's your account manager there? And then lastly, phone number of that person that you're going to contact. You're not going to call the person's phone number back to the one that called you. You're going to go to the appropriate phone number for that individual that you have on file, and you're going to call that person back. So I just want to say thanks for being here today. This is weekly, Thursdays, 1:30 Central Standard Time. This is to get you the information you need and get you back to work. And I want to say thank you for being here today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to scan the QR code, book a 15-minute free strategy session with us, and we'll talk to you about your security concerns and maybe how Vandernet can better help you secure your business or just simply help you evaluate your risk. So give us a call. Our phone number, 417-973-0365. And I will be sending out the new QR code, and it'll be the same meeting link for next week. I just want to say thanks again and have a wonderful day. We look forward to talking to you next week and seeing you soon.